Board of Directors to order, and if I could have Ms. Diane Costa lead us in an invocation.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Father, we just come before your throne as humbly as we know how, Lord, but boldly, Father, and we just thank you for this life-giving rain. Quite a bit at one time, but we'll take it. We thank you, Lord, and Father, you command all things that happen, and we thank you for that, Lord. And there is not one single thing that any of us can do to garner more of your love. Father, I thank you for every person here and their families, Lord. Father, you know each and every challenge that we're going through, and Lord, we just ask you to bring your Holy Spirit today, Lord, to keep us focused on the issues of the day, Lord. There are so many issues worldwide. And Father, the comfort that we have is that you are in control. You still sit on the throne, Father, and we thank you for all the opportunities that you give us to serve here in Denton County. We are truly blessed, Lord. The more I talk to others around the state, the more I realize how unique you have risen us up as truly a county to give you glory for all the good that happens in this particular county. We know that you, Lord, who cares for Israel, neither sleeps nor slumbers. So, Father, we ask you to help the issues that are going on there, protect the people, the children, the women, and the soldiers that are there, Lord. And today, again, Lord, keep us focused on the issues that you have called us to do today. And Father, be with us and give us the wisdom and knowledge, understanding, and sound judgment that we need for these decisions. We ask all things in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledges to our flags. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Thank you all. Mr. Christina, do we have any introductions?
None today, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, next up on the agenda, we have public comment. The agenda item provides for an opportunity for citizens to address the DCTA Board of Directors on any agenda items or other matters relating to DCTA. Each speaker will be given a total of 3 minutes to address any items. Anyone wishing to speak shall be courteous and cordial. Speakers making personal, impertinent, profane, or slanderous remarks may be removed from the meeting. Unauthorized remarks from the audience, stamping of feet, whistles, yells, clapping, and similar demonstrations will not be permitted. Of course, citizens that aren't able to participate in person can email us. That is usually done no later than 3 p.m. on the Wednesday before our meetings to ensure the comment can come to the board prior to the meeting. I do have one public comment, which is from Liam, and I'm sorry, Gom Wakefield. Gom, thank you, sir. From Denton, and wants to speak on an item not listed on the agenda. Please, if you would, state your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Liam. I live in the city of Denton. I'm here because I know I've heard the long-term plan is going to get started in January, but I just wanted to speak on the bus system in general for the long-term plan. It is something that has occurred to me many of a time is that in Denton, we have Fry Street, we have Around the Square, and there's many bars. And we have a drunk driving issue in the state of Texas. And one way that you solve drunk driving issues is you have people don't have to drive home from bars or restaurants where they drink. And I think one of the big gaps in the system is that we don't have late night, not even to just 10, our buses don't even go to 10. It's like they don't go to 12 or last call at 2. And that leaves people, if they don't want to drive to places, they either have to have a designated driver or they break the law because they want to get home, which we have the opportunity with DCTA to prevent drunk driving. which I know there's a lot of people affected by that on these roads in the state of in the state of Texas, in the city of Denton, in Denton County, in Louisville, Highland Village. And Go Zone is good, and I'm glad it's here. And I know you are seeking to improve that, but if we had a bus system which people could rely upon, they would be far more likely to take that instead of driving home drunk.
Thank you, sir. There are no further speakers. We will move on to the consent agenda. There are 5 items on the consent agenda. Board, if there is nothing to be pulled, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Board, if you please vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes unanimously. The consent agenda has been approved. Next up, regular agenda. Item 1, consider approval of a monthly financial statement for August 2023, quarterly grants report for Q4, fiscal year 2023, updated investment policy, and receive an update from the Chief Financial Officer regarding finance operations. Ms. Evans-Jones.
Thank you. Sherelle Evans-Jones, Chief Financial Officer for DCTA. I am pleased to be with you today to present some financial information, provide you with some updates as to things that are happening with our team and with other finance projects. And just to kind of answer any questions or anything that I might be able to help with from a financial perspective. I'm excited to get a chance to bring Mr. Joe Oram up for his DCTA debut later on in the presentation. So excited about that. I'll start with the financial update. This is the August 30th, 2023 information. It shows that we have, I thought you said we could. Okay, I'm not going to do it. It shows that we have actual revenue through year to date of $44,563,000 compared to a budgeted position where we would want to be of $48 million. So we're moving ahead of budget in terms of compared to budget overall. We're doing well. In terms of the sales tax number, we're up about $715,000 compared to the position where we anticipated being when we developed the budget. The other thing that we have seen is a growth in the actual number from a federal state operating grant perspective. That number is now up to $2.7 million. I think when our grants manager started, it might have been it was under 400,000. So we've been working really hard to to submit reimbursement grants to that we are allowed under our federal contracts, and that number has grown quite a bit. In terms of operating expenses, I would say largely this overall financial picture is, I would classify it as more of the same types of data that we have seen as a board as a board over the course of the past several quarters that I've been presenting it. In terms of operating expenses overall, you see a similar trend with the revenue. Well, actually good in an opposite way, of $37.9 million of total actual revenue compared to $58.8 million of where we thought we would be at this point in time when the budget was originally baked. The actuals continue to trend less than the budget, largely due to periods of largely due to staffing, as we have been working throughout the course of this year to ramp up our staffing. And a lot of those expenses kind of trail and tie directly to projects, et cetera, that we are kicking off and having to flow through the actuals now. Lastly, I'll point out I guess one of my favorite line items here for this particular year is the investment income. That item just continues to perform very well with a little over $4 million in actual revenue. Those funds during the course of September, this is just like a little bit of an update, like anecdotal update beyond what you have in front of you. During the month of September, we had a number of investments that were already matured that have been reinvested. So you'll see that in the upcoming, you'll see that in the portfolio when we present to you the September investment report. Overall, the change in net position is kind of the governmental term for net income. And overall, we're showing net income of 6.1 million. So when we're comparing the expenditures that we have received year to date compared to the actual revenue that we've received, we're up, we're performing better than anticipated compared to the budget, and we are generating net income at this point. I'll turn it over to Mr. Joe Oram to talk about some of the things that we're doing from a procurement perspective, just so you can understand some of the projects and complexities that we're working through as we refine processes and bring some new things forward. So, come on up, Joe.
Morning, Chair Gilmore, members of the board. I'm Joe Orm, a Senior Manager of Contracts and Procurement for DCTA. Yeah, like Cheryl mentioned, I'm going to touch on a few new processes and efficiencies that we've been able to launch over the last couple of months. First off is an e-procurement platform. We did have something similar to this. It was called BidSync before, and it was just simply to advertise bids and RFPs for submittals. We actually launched Planet Bids a couple months back now, and it has a number of new tools. So vendor management, so we can keep up on all of our vendors, all update information that we have. Bid management is the same thing, advertising our bids and RFPs. The contract management tool is neat, which is new to us, but all of our contracts are housed in here now, and they provide auto notifications to staff on renewals, expirations. All of the documentation is all housed in one place. And the insurance certificate management is neat as well, where it actually auto manages all insurance certs for all of our vendors in our database as well, which pings them for expirations. It sends auto emails to them to update their information. And on top of it, it actually emails their brokers as well. So we know that we always have up-to-date content within our system, which eliminates the need for staff to be running around and calling people to obtain insurance certificates for certain projects we'll have. And the best thing about it is we got all this new functionality, and it's at a less cost than what we were doing previously to this. Next, we're getting it back into the digital world, as many agencies are doing these days. We just launched the use of Adobe Sign, and it's not just to drag and drop a signature on a contract or such. It's actually a full workflow platform. So we are doing all of our contracts, our task orders, anything internally, externally binding for DCTA through the Adobe Sign platform. For example, the mobility contracts that were brought to you last month, usually about a 1 week to 2 week process to get them all signed and routed. We were able to route them, execute them, and get them going within a 24-hour period. Using this platform moving forward. Public surplus. So we've had public surplus for a while, but just of note, we actually in the last 90 days, we've listed 28 different auctions, which is, it's a work in itself because each auction is its own individual thing. You're dealing with an individual buyer, and we're doing everything from minivans to cutaways to parts to whatever it may be. But in the last 90 days, 28 auctions, and we've garnered over $120,000 in sales in the last 90 days. And last but not least, the agency's disadvantaged business enterprise program. This is something that needed to be overhauled and updated. So we've actually updated our program policy that's been overhauled and already updated and signed and ready to go. We did hire a company called GCAP Services. This is a transition from who we were using in the past. Basically, we have 2 annual reports that are due to the FTA on each year. And we use a Vantage Point software platform now where our contractors report all of their subcontracting expenses in the program. and it auto generates our semi-annual report for the FTA. So we just simply have to click a button that says submit, and now all of our semi-annual reporting is done with a click of a button. And that's it for me. I just wanted to touch on a couple of new things going on from the contracts and procurement side, and hopefully within the next year, we'll be able to come back and share a whole bunch of new efficiencies as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could just say that to commend Joe and the work that he's done since he's been here, jumping in with both feet to automate things wherever possible. The Adobe sign process, as he mentioned, that by itself has been a huge benefit and eliminates a major pain point that we were experiencing at the agency. So appreciate Joe's engagement, creativity, and energy to get all this stuff done. So thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm just so proud of the caliber of team members we have
Right.
that are bringing amazing skill to the table. And I just want as much as possible for you to understand the details of some of the things that we're working on as a team. So from time to time, you may see me appear with some of our team members just so that they can have an opportunity to explain some of the things that they're working on that are really important to the agency. So with that, I'll share one slide here that talks a little bit about the quarterly balances. So these represent the balances of the various different grants that we have that are open. And you see a $19.4 million third quarter balance, and then you see a $22.1 million fourth quarter balance. Hey, Sherelle, what's that about? During the, so we have a number of drawdowns that would be subtracts from, you know, the third quarter balances and maybe even some fourth quarter balances. But we also, during this period, received our annual allocation. So it pops the number back up. So overall, it's a good thing because it's basically loading us up for the 2024 year, if that makes sense. So I just wanted you to have a picture of some of the things that we have available in terms of grant balances. And then I'll talk about our investment portfolio. Total market value of $106.8 million compared to book value 106.8, slight unrealized net loss. We stand there, we can take it, we hold it until maturity, and those investments do come back and pay. As you see it showing up in the income line item, those investments do come back and pay pretty well. At this point, at the August point of our of this statement, our average days of maturity were 7 days, because remember how I said a number of those investments matured in September. So, and then they were reinvested. So you see a 7 days with an average 4.4% maturity yield. This is something I wanted to, so Keisha was giving me a hard time this morning because I was updating this slide. If you have this slide in your materials, it has changed. And has changed, like I'm proud of some of the things that have happened even since we published this. One, in terms of our working through approved hires, we have completed the hire of the senior manager of accounting. We've extended an offer, I'll say, and we're excited about that individual joining our team on November 13th. We have completed the hiring process for our accounting coordinator, and that person will start this Monday. You may remember from our budgeting process, we had 3 coordinator level positions that would be a part of the finance team. So the accounting coordinator is one. We will begin to work on we already are started working on the other 2, but those are ongoing. So we're working to build out that team with just great individuals with great backgrounds and that servant leader mentality to be able to come in and add value to our team. So please forgive me for the late breaking update. In terms of ERP upgrade, we've started. The work that we've done so far includes two two-day demos where the companies come in, they bring a lot of people or a little number of people, and they basically unpack all the aspects of the financial software. As well, we also ask them to show us what other types of products that might be able to plug in nicely with their core financial package that we might consider in future phases. So things, for instance, like the HR product, asset management to help track fleet fleet and work order repairs and things like that. So it was a 2-day demo from 2 different software providers. I'll share this picture as an update for just how full the room was for one of the demos, where we had like a ton of individuals that came in from the software provider. All of our DCTA staff members were there to look at these things from a different perspective. Like, I was really pleased with the level of participation that we've received from our team members that have a really vested interest, not just the finance team members, but that have a really vested interest in helping ask the questions and understand. And I can just see people are getting excited. So where do we go from here? We've done the demos. Each of those end with open items, questions, checking of references for other municipalities or transit providers or whatever that have that software and maybe have taken that software recently. We're working through those steps. We'll be back to you soon, because our next steps will be to bring forward who we believe is going to be the best long-term solution to change the financial history of this organization by bringing a modern piece of technology that will help us to take care of the needs. So we'll be back with you with a contract for somebody. We'll let you know soon, okay? Excited about that. I'm really excited about that. And then financial FY23 close is underway. We're working through with our auditors, providing, I shouldn't use audit terms, providing schedules so that they can conduct their work. And we anticipate being able to deliver those audit financial statements for your review and approval in accordance with our normal timelines. So, oh, and I have a confession. Okay, so you might have noticed that some of this stuff is August, this is September. Like, I made a mistake, I got excited. And what I did is this quarterly presentation really should be like next month and be September, okay? So you just got a little bit early, and what you should expect in your next month's board package would include an investment update for the month, for the quarter ended September 30th, and your normal finance presentation, financial statements, but I just won't make a presentation for September 30th because I jumped the gun, I got excited, I was excited to tell you about all the good stuff. Okay, please forgive me. Are there any questions that I can help?
Had one brief question, Ms. Evans Jones, and this may be my reading. So on the federal state grants, the operating, it says we're 10 million under budget. And collections.
Yes.
Can you talk to me about those revenues, the timelines? We're not expecting to see that. What's the detail to that?
So you may recall this during our budget process where we talked about how, am I on the right place? Where we talked about how this number was based on, this is the balance that we have available to us. Okay, so when the 2023 budget was devised, the number that was factored in was merely a function of, I have $20 million that was available, I spent 7, so I have 13 left, okay? But what we have learned about how that money is expended, it's a reimbursement. So you don't get to just bill 13 if you didn't spend the pieces that are allowable under the contract. So what you see happen, so the answer to your question is, no, we're not going to collect all that this year. And it's not a hair on fire type of moment because, wrong way, hold on. How did this happen? It's not a hair on fire type moment because we also didn't expend the money in the course of doing our work that allows for us to collect that type of money.
But we still have a $10 million credit sitting out there that we
Correct.
possibly could.
Correct.
Okay.
It rolls into the balance of uncollected funds.
Okay.
Correct. Yes,
Thank you. I
Mhm.
appreciate the refresher.
no problem. Any other questions I can help with?
All right. Board, this is an action item. I'll entertain a motion to approve the statements.
Motion to approve?
I have a motion, a second. Board, please vote.
Aye.
We are unanimous. Thank you, ma'am. Item 2, discuss update on the Collin County Rides Program and consider approval of the funding agreement with the North Central Texas Council of Governments for Collin County Rides Transit Services for an amount not to exceed $1.647750 million for a period of up to 2 years, beginning on the execution date and continuing through September 30th, 2025, with an option to extend 1 additional year through September 30th, 2026, and authorize the Chief Executive Officer to execute such agreement. Mr. Bell.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. It's an honor to be able to present to you today this recommendation for approval on Collin County Rides Program. What we have here are 5 different items. Each one of them it supports the whole program, from the agreement with the COG to, of course, the interlocal agreements between Allen and ourselves, as well as Fairview and ourselves and DCTA, and of course the task orders for their services being provided by Irving Holdings in support of Collin County Rides Program, as well as LIFT program. The details of this are very simple. Although the service is currently being provided by DART, you can see here utilizing this graph here on the top left corner. In FY22, October of 22, the service started with over 780 rides, one-way trips. Right now, in September of 23, it's over 1,300 trips per month. So you can see there's a significant growth in that area. Now, what we're proposing is to change the model from what DART is currently provided, which I will share with you a little bit later. What we're looking to do is start the service off with a Monday through Friday service and 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. in order to provide more quality of a service by reducing some of the service area. Right now, that service included Wiley, but Wiley is currently opted out to be able to be part of this. And so we're only focusing on Allen and Fairview. Allen right now makes up over 90% of the actual utilization of this service, with Fairview being 10. But as you can see, it's definitely something that's going to work out with the funding associated. And I will share a little bit more here in regards to the details. Right now, we got the funding agreements, as I spoke to earlier, with, of course, the COG that we have to approve, the interlocal agreements between Allen and Fairview and ourselves, as well as the operating contracts of Irving Holdings and LIFT. The parts that we've been working diligently on recently is the technology piece between Spare Labs and DCTA, and of course, the agreement between DART, Spare Labs, and DCTA. Since Spare Labs is currently utilized by DART to provide this service, it makes for a perfect transition for us to assume that software as well, make it easier on the customers as well as ourselves and the planning of this. And the next one is the access agreements between DART and ourselves, since there are some areas within Collin County that DART provides service in, and we need to be able to access their areas in order to transfer passengers looking to continue into DART service area. Now, this is the program funding overview. Right now, from a taxi hours of service, we're looking at 828 hours on a monthly basis. Very conservatively put, right now, they're looking at 1.3 trips per hour. As you'll learn a little bit later, there's a way we can, of course, expand the actual trips per hour in our proposal. But right now, the monthly cost of this is actually an inflated number. We're working right now to try and reduce this number, which I'm confident in doing so, as this is a worst case scenario. When I say that, the cost per hour on the taxi cabs, whether it be standard or wave, and I will point that out there in the bottom corner here. But then we also have, of course, our funding agreements which are going to be through September of 2025 with the COG. And of course, Allen and Fairview will be through 2025. This gives us an opportunity to tweak this model a little bit and of course, provide the coverage that they're looking for during this term.
Mr. Bell, if I could just interject something real quick on this slide. I want to emphasize the point that this program is anticipated as a base year of 2 years plus 1 option year, depending on funding availability. We're entering into this with a lot of unknowns with regard to the demand and the demand growth, like was mentioned in the current slide. And so it's very important for everyone to understand that right now we're looking at a base 2-year program. And if money's available, we go into the 3rd year. This is requiring us to be in constant communication with the cities and with the COG on how the monies are being spent so that we can figure out how long this program goes before a decision point is reached with regard to the cities and or the COG bringing more money to the table to continue the program. But in our agreement with the COG and our agreement with the cities, the terms outlined there are very clear that when the money is over, the program is over. So just want to make sure you understand that. Thanks.
Thank you.
And Mr. Christina, I'm just going to piggyback on that. The COG is only funding the position for 2 years.
So that great, you're talking about the mobility specialist
Yes.
position. Yeah, so if you go back 1 slide, Mr. Bell, that second item there, the mobility manager position is really a mobility specialist position. That's going to be the executive committee of NCT COG today for approval. And it is currently programmed as a 3-year position. That is also not just specific to this program, but all of our mobility services portfolio. The COG understands that as we're doing these things in Frisco and other places. So we're just going to have to wait and see how things go in the first 2 years before figuring out what we can.
So here's the additional summary of the services, the differences between DART and DCTA and what we're looking to provide. As I mentioned earlier, based on the eligibility, that's going to stay the same for our customers. But the difference here is the fact that we've removed Wiley from those service areas for those residents because they are going to be doing their own services. But the service area, we're going to reduce the actual service area in Collin County. And we are going to stay more specific to those locations within Allen and Fairview. And again, as I mentioned before, the DART network is part of some areas within Collin County. So that's where that agreement comes in between us and DART. The hours of service have changed, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., except holidays. That's going to be Monday through Friday. The app itself from Spare Labs provides an opportunity for the customers to be able to book their trips on their own. So we don't have to, of course, do bookings for every single trip with customer service. That's a true benefit. Right now, we are assessing the volume of trips that are being booked via the app, and that's going to help us out as we go further into this. Vehicle utilization, DART actually did it based on matching the mobility needs to the customer. We are going to be evaluating that and making sure we're providing wheelchair accessibility via the taxi cabs in order to anticipate any changes. If any of you are familiar with non-ADA and ADA services, those change periodically based on the customer's needs. And so that can actually play a role in the trips per hour on a regular basis. And so this is where we're going to fine tune that to make sure that we're providing the best service possible. Lastly, I think one of the most important pieces is there's currently discussions right now to determine the feasibility on the fare pieces, and that's in regards to the customer service portion down here, the customer pay. Right now, they're 25% of trip costs until the customer spends $125 during the course of the month. That's something that we're trying to evaluate, get a better understanding for, and we're working with the COG and of course those cities to make sure that we can find out where that sweet spot is before we end up launching on February 1st. Now, this is the current service area. The first graph you see to the left here is the monthly boardings from November 22 to September 23. The second one in the middle there is the average number of boardings per day of the week. And of course, the last one there are the number of boardings per hour of the day for that same period. The X's you see are the areas in which we're not going to be providing service, which allows us to focus our attention on the core portion of the service. And when you're looking at the hours of the day, you can see where the volume of the services that we're going to be focusing on. This next piece here, same type of coverage in regards to monthly service to days of the week and hours, but the areas that you see and highlighted in this area are the services that are currently being provided by DART that we are going to be reducing in order to get that control and increase that ridership. And that's what I was referring to earlier with down here. This dotted line here represents 1 cab, the one above it represents 2, and the one above that represents 3. And as you can see, as we increase and provide more cab service, we are anticipating to be able to provide more coverage and of course, increase the rider trips per hour and have the availability to expand as service grows based on what we've seen the trends are in this service. Now, this is another overview. This is not plans for 4th of July over McKinney or anything else, but this is the slide, the picture to your left is actually the service being provided by DART as it is today. And you can see how many trips are going back and forth and the volume of service in and out of Allen and Fairview. But when you look to the picture to your right, that is the dotted line area is the Allen and Fairview overview. That is going to be our focus point. So we are not going to be looking at a lot of the trips that are going outside of that polygon, we like to call it, area of service. That allows us to, again, be more specific to the ridership, make sure that we're focusing our attention where it matters most right now. And again, providing that quality of service for on-time performance and of course, trips per hour. This is just a quick overview of the implementation schedule that our new VP of Planning is gracious to help us out with, Austin. This is just a snapshot, and this gives you an idea of the amount of work that's being done in progress of this. And it's definitely a work in progress, but from Spare Labs integration to, of course, the external prep for operations, all of this is going over very well and it's progressing successfully. So, but right now, from an overview summary, again, we're looking at assembling all the data points from the COG as well as DART in coordination with Spare Labs. We know already that there's at least 300 registered riders in Allen and of course 50 in Fairview. That has the potential of growing based on what changes we've made. Changing the service itself from what DART was currently providing to what we are going to be providing from the hours of service to the days of service in the geographical area. And then of course, looking at the trips per hour and being able to maximize the vehicles more efficiently for these member cities. And then the DCTA Spare Labs integration, we've been able to review it very closely with the help of our senior manager of mobility services and of course Spare Labs and Javier Trilla. We have been working close and determined that the 2 to 3 vehicles dedicated, which we assumed from the very beginning when this came up, I'm glad to say, was going to be the ideal number of vehicles. And all the data coming back so far is panning out to show just that. So that's a big successful win on our part. But the evaluation, of course, the feasibility structure on fares is going to happen before February. And then the last piece, of course, is the commitment from the COG to be able to provide the funding for the mobility specialist for the next 2 years of this agreement. So with that, again, I'm recommending staff recommendations to the board for the approval of these 5 items here. And any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I just want to thank staff. When DART decided not to service these cities anymore, the population is critical. The people that are needing this service is critical. And when DCTA was approached, I appreciated that staff wasn't like, yeah, we can do this. It was like, well, wait a minute, let's get the approval from RTC for the funding. And then we can't necessarily do it in the time that you've given us, but give us the opportunity to work it out. I mean, I think as the board can see how detailed all this is, right? And so all the man hours and then requesting the mobility specialist. I just want to thank staff for being precise in the needs that we have to be able to service. But it does speak to how COG views DCTA. I think it speaks volumes, and And it speaks a lot of our DCTA staff that it's like, we want to work, we want to help this, but it comes with a cost and detailed information. So thank you, Paul and Maurice and all the staff that worked on this project.
Other questions? Mr. Bell, just a quick question for me. Did we recommend the service changes and reductions? Did Allen and Fairview have part of that conversation? How did that all play out?
That was from us. That
Okay.
was actually from us. And when we looked at the data and we looked at the number of trips that were traveling so far in distance and outside of that area, it starts to become what we refer to in the industry as undesirable trips when you're trying to maximize the effectiveness and efficiency of those. You don't want to have one vehicle being dedicated from Allen all the way into Dallas. That means
I
you're
saw a couple of
eliminating,
those.
yeah, you're eliminating
That service is gone for an
service
hour.
for those other customers that truly need it the most.
Okay. When we talk about this service type, it's said in the documentation that passengers will not receive assistance from the drivers, like if they have wheelchairs or something like that, I'm assuming. What happens if they do need assistance getting their equipment in and out of the vehicle?
Well, that's where we have to come into those agreements of how many bags, no different than an ADA level of service. We have to understand exactly what those demands are, what they're currently receiving through DART, and kind of mirror that. That's something that becomes a little bit more flexible. And it's not something that honestly can be thrown into an agreement in that regard, because you need to understand what those passengers are currently using. And when it comes down to assisting, obviously, if they have wheelchairs, that goes without being said. We want to make sure that they're safely secured in the vehicles. And so there will be some assistance in that regard. But again, I hate to say it, it comes down to common sense when we're trying to transport that passenger base when it comes to assistance.
Okay, super. And I think one of the questions that I've heard from the board is, and that we definitely want to make sure we talk about in January, is the why of this. How does this, absolutely, regionalism is a piece of the conversation, but the other piece of the conversation is how do we get more transit, more people understanding that this is a consistent, dedicated, and not a turn on, turn off kind of thing. So I hope the board comes loaded for bear on that one when we have our retreat to really talk about the policy direction that we want for these types of regional types of projects and what's our intended outcome for these things. So appreciate that. With that, so most of this was discussion, but we do need to have a approval or a vote on the following items: RA02, RA03, RA04, RA05, and RA06. Board, I will entertain a motion.
I'd like to, I believe I need to do these one at a time. Is that correct,
Yeah, let's
Joe?
go ahead, just in case any of these need individual meeting minutes for each one of these, since they're separate, we'll just do one at a time. You say,
Okay.
motion to approve RA02 as presented.
Okay,
Got it.
then I'll make a motion to approve RA02 as presented.
Second.
A motion to second. Board, please vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
I'll make a motion to approve RA03 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion to second. Board, please vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Passes.
I'll make a motion to approve RA04 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion to second. Board, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Passes.
I'll make a motion to approve RA05 as presented.
I have a motion to second. Board, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
I'll make a motion to approve RA06 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion to second. Board, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Passes. Thank you for that. All right. Next up, item 3, consider approval of the interlocal agreement with the city of Allen for Collin County Rides Transit Services for moved on, got them all.
We're on number 7.
I'm up all the way down. Too many pages. Too many pages. Item 7, discuss update on consolidated Denton County Transportation Authority customer service function. We do have Mr. Paul Christina to take us through this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm pleased to present to you an update on our efforts to consider a consolidated customer service function at DCTA. This is a discussion item only, no action is required. And first start out with the what and the why are we talking? Consistent with our key messages about driving a better future for Denton County and making it easy for the rider, we're looking to develop a consolidated in-sourced customer service function because as you know today, we have two different customer service channels, one for NTMC provided services and the A-Train, and the other for GoZone services via and a contract that we have with us. And we think the outcomes are going to be these as follows: improved experiences for our customers and our employees, a better quality of customer service, a better means of collecting data on our customer service needs, and ultimately cost efficiencies, because the VIA contract cost in fiscal 23 last year, $420,000. This year, we're looking at $560,000, and we would anticipate in the out years that those costs would only increase. One thing I want to highlight with regard to these first three items here is, as we've talked about the need to have an integrated service so that somebody who goes out on a trip on one mode and has a trouble getting back to their origin for any reason, needs to be able to call DCTA customer service and say, I am at this location, I need help, please send a vehicle to come and get me. This strategy and structure allows us to get to that point. So in this analysis, we're just giving you a general overview of our current customer service requirements. We've got quite a bit of data that's come together for this. A general overview of staffing considerations and financial impact of those scenarios. And then really looking for you all to provide some concurrence on our desire to continue down this path. As you know, we have a budgeted position for a leader of customer service that we would like to fill as soon as possible if this is still the process that we want to go down. So these slides are on your iPad, and so I'll just run through them really quickly. But right now, two different channels of customer service: DCTA customer service, that if you call this phone number, you'll get to a phone tree, and you'll either be able to press option 2 to go to VIA, or any of the other options take you to NTMC. And then, as you know, if you go to our downtown Denton Transit Center, you can go to the window and get assistance as well. One big difference, though, the GoZone customer service operation runs much longer hours because the GoZone service runs much longer hours than does our NTMC customer service. GoZone, anywhere from 5 a.m. to 2 a.m. Monday through 5 a.m. to 1 a.m. on Monday to Thursday, 5 to 2 on Friday and Saturday, 8 to 6 on Sunday. NTMC customer service, Monday through Friday, 7 to 6, although the call center does start a little bit earlier and end a little bit later. And we do have service available by phone for NTMC on Saturdays. And then down here, we talk about the resources that assigned, a contract resource from VIA, and then we have staff assigned from NTMC, and we'll get into that a little bit later. The proposal would be one consolidated customer service function that DCTA customer service / NTMC customer service would allow you to do all the things you need for GoZone and all the things you need for our bus and train and GoZone service all at the same time. So let's talk about the basis of this analysis, which is the demand. Here's a view of ridership on NTMC services for the entire fiscal year of last year and the call volume generated for those NTMC services. You know, as we said, this is 5 days a week of service in person, and then phone support available for bus and rail on Saturdays. On the NTMC side, we don't have very good data on what is the different types of calls that are wrapped up in these numbers, but in general, it's about general questions about complaints, lost and found, those sorts of things. But one of the reasons that we want to hire a customer service leader is to be able to start collecting the data that would identify those calls by type so we can learn more about our own needs. An interesting note here is that NTMC customer service averages about 4,200 calls a month against a monthly service volume of about 173,000 rides. And so that we call that what the call rate is about 2.4% of all the trips on NTMC generate some kind of call to customer service. There's a good idea to have an understanding of what's the baseline across the industry, and we are certainly working on that. But the GoZone service gives us another touch point that gives us some context. So this is just GoZone ridership, and anytime anybody engages with the GoZone platform to book a ride. So here's completed rides, if you were provided a proposal for a ride and you declined that proposal, if you got a ride and you canceled the ride, if you no-showed for your ride, or if you got seat unavailable. That's every time somebody interacts with the GoZone platform, and that averages about 110 or 120,000 contacts in a month. This service, like it says over in the right, available 7 days a week, and general call types that you see down there, general questions, complaints, lost and found. But we also know that it's about booking, and there's a typo here, it's about booking GoZone rides. Paratransit is on the NTMC side. What we don't know here is how are these calls distributed Monday to Friday versus Saturday and Sunday. We would expect that those call volumes would be different, but we need to dig further into the data and do some more analysis to figure that out. What's the call volume during the week? What's the call volume during the weekend? Our call volume is shown in this graph here below. We're at about 18,400 calls a month. If you compare that to our average monthly service volume of about 109,000, what you see is about 16.9% of all the GoZone trips generate GoZone engagements generate some kind of call to customer service. We don't know exactly why that is. We could draw some conclusions. Maybe there's an expectation about a more personal service that makes people more apt to call in. We know that a pretty good number of people call in to book rides. And so for whatever reason, this GoZone service generates more call volume on a per engagement basis. And that's another reason we want to have a dedicated person on this so that we can dig into that. However, what this slide shows is that of all the rides booked on GoZone, about 95% of those are booked by the app. So in the whole universe of who's using GoZone, the vast majority of all those users are already using the app. We know that ideally we want everybody to engage with ride booking on the app, but this gives us a good idea about what's feasible, about how much of that we can eliminate. If you're thinking about 95% uptake on booking by app, that's pretty good. We could still drive a goal to maybe cut that booking by phone in half, but the relative nature of that volume versus the overall volume is pretty telling, as you see in this slide. We're working with VIA customer service now to understand how many unique callers are booking rides by phone. We don't have that from them yet. We also asked some questions about what kind of language support do they see and needs do they see. They said less than 1% of the calls require Spanish support. All the other calls or all the other languages are even less than that. And when they need those services, they use a Lionbridge, which is an electronic translation platform for that. So this is a largely English-speaking population calling to book rides on GoZone. So now when we look at that GoZone call volume by month, you see those in the blue bars here, and then the orange bars are the NTMC calls. Now we're combining those call volumes together. And then on the bar, on the chart on the right, you're seeing what that call distribution would look like all throughout the course of what is a GoZone service day from 5 a.m. to as late as 11 p.m. or midnight, although those calls look really relatively minor on this graph. What you see is kind of what you would expect. Slow start in the morning, pretty heavy, consistent call volume all day long, and then it tapers off at the end. These are snapshots. Again, more analysis required. We took a snapshot of call distribution on GoZone for September, call distribution for NTMC in October. I would expect that when we can dig into it and look at this call volume and distribution for the year, we're not going to see much difference in this, but we just haven't gotten to that level of analysis yet.
Paul?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
have a question.
Sure.
Do you have any idea how the GoZone call volume for fiscal year 23 compares to 22?
We do not. That's a more analysis required to pull all this together. That we've been working through trying to get this data set together for quite some time. I think that would be an interesting point. I would expect it would be more since our overall ridership has grown, but I do not have that
I'm just curious if maybe part of the volume has to do with the fact that it's a new service, and so we're getting more calls, and that over time, some of that percentage on the call rate might go down over time.
It may, and that would be a great addition to this analysis for sure. Thank you for that. So when we take a look at the metrics that we have on the productivity of the Go Zone customer service. These are stats that we got from VIA. They average about 27 calls an hour, average wait time of 24 seconds. Their average call time is about 4.5 minutes, which will be, the next slide will give you some context on that. And then you see numbers on call abandonment rate and customer satisfaction rate, 82% against an industry average of 77%. We do not have a good picture on how many FTEs GoZone would consider assigned to handle this call volume, because as we understand it, they're working through call centers and geographically dispersed people. And so that'd be another part of this analysis that we need to continue. So if we want to talk about planning for our own customer service function, how do we do that? Well, we start with the great staff that we already have. Our current NTMC customer service staff does a lot of different jobs kind of all at the same time. There's a few of them that are just answering the phone, but there are some who are also doing paratransit service scheduling, customer care, all that sort of thing. And we have a shift manager or a customer service manager also on board. And we have others who are manning the window while they are also taking customer service calls. So if this analysis is just about call volume and our capacity to handle call volume, what we have to do is think about every one of these employees' availability to just answer the phone. And so that's what's happening in this table. In this case, for instance, the customer service manager, you expect the leader does not have time to be just on the phone. So about 10% of her time, we would say, is spent answering phone calls. The rest is handling escalations and other things that happen in the call center during her shift. Here you have a mobility services representative, full-time equivalent doing call support. That's on shift 1. They come into the building on 4 shifts. Shift 2, we have a mobility services representative who handles the ticket window and answers the call. Answers calls what we'd say 50% of the time. The paratransit scheduler is working with paratransit customers answering the phone, but not the general NTMC type questions. So we'd say she's available to answer general questions 20% of the time, and so on down the line that you see. They come on to work starting at about 4 a.m. and then ending up at 7 p.m. And so shift 1, these two folks here are the blue block. Shift 2 are the green block. Shift 3, the silver block. Shift 4, the yellow block. So if you start adding up the FTEs that are available at any given period of the day, you see how the combined power or person power of those shifts come together. So in instance, from 4 to 6, you got just shift 1, 1.1 people answering the phone, but between 11 and 12, you got all 4 shifts on duty at the same time. So you get the cumulative impact of about 4.5 FTEs, and that's the peak of the day. So at any given time, we say we've got 1.1 to 4.5 FTEs just answering customer service calls at NTMC. Does that make sense? Okay. And then if you look over on the right, this is how those NTMC calls were distributed all throughout the course of the day from the previous graph. And then we've simply taken these FTE equivalents and put them across the top of the graph there so you can see the people who are assigned to handle those volumes of calls. On the NTMC side, we see about 10 calls an hour. Average wait time is a little bit longer than GoZone, 1 minute and 13 seconds, but average call time is about 2 minutes faster. Now, that's another interesting point about why that might be. Anecdotally, we've heard from people who are booking GoZone rides and they're having trouble communicating to the call center about where exactly they are in Denton, as opposed to somebody at NTMC who knows exactly where the customer is because they say they're at the corner of X and Y, and they can send somebody to help or take care of their issue right away. We've also heard anecdotally about concerns over language barriers and things like that from VIA call center. And obviously our people are local, and so they communicate very effectively. So if we now think about how to apply that manpower to the combined NTMC and GoZone call volume, I'll point you to this graph here. 3 different types of vertical bars. The hashed bar are GoZone assumed bookings by phone. Right now, because we don't have all the data worked out, we're assuming about 2/3 of all the GoZone calls are bookings by phone, because we had heard on a month-to-month basis somewhere between 50 to 60%. So if these are GoZone bookings by phone, and these are all the other GoZone calls, and then these are the NTMC calls, and you consider that people answer the phone and handle call volume on a 5 minutes per call basis or a 3 minutes per call basis, and they can work for 50 minutes at a time, or 50 minutes in an hour, they take a 10-minute break. That tells you that every operator can handle between 10 and 17 calls in an hour. So if you lay that productivity over the top of this bar, what you see is in the AM PM, you need to handle about 20 calls an hour. At midday, you got to handle 42 calls an hour. At peak, you got to handle 65. You require between 2 and 7 FTEs to handle phone calls at any given time. Now, what's being done to reduce that booking by phone volume? GoZone is working with us, or working really with themselves on developing an interactive voice response menu that will take the opportunity to help people with an automated ride booking by phone. So we're waiting to see development of that. We anticipate our Spare Labs platform will help us move customer service requests along faster. And then we anticipate other technologies will be identified that allow this to move on faster and lower the overall staffing requirement. So let's say we're able to do that. Let's say we're able to cut the call volume in half related to booking rides by phone. That's what's shown here. You see how the hash bar gets lower and the overall volume gets lower. Same metrics before, 3 to 5 minutes a call. What you see there is if we can reduce it by 50%, you're still looking at 2 to 6 full-time equivalents on any given time, or the 100% ride booking factor, 2 to 7 full-time equivalents. So how we would lay that out in a consolidated DCTA customer service function is still 4 shifts. And we have 2 different scenarios here. If we had 4 call center FTEs or 6 call center FTEs to answer combined NTMC and DCTA call volume. Are currently assigned on this row, our proposed assignment on this row would be adding 1 per shift. And then you assign those by shift, and you take the cumulative number of how many people are available on every shift. And what you see is you get 2 to 6 FTEs available at any given time answering the phone to meet that demand. On the other side, 6 new FTEs would provide you 2 to 7 FTEs available at any given time answering the phone. Now, features to clarify and resolve on here. We don't have an hour of coverage down here at the bottom. That would probably drive an overtime requirement on a regular basis. We have 2 shift supervisors shown. We also don't have a plan yet or a good view yet on the weekend customer service. But this gives us directionally for the bulk of 5 of the 7 days a week, what we'd be looking for. So right now we're working with VIA to understand what can we take from them, and therefore what cost savings can we get from that $560,000 a year we spend on customer service. How we're doing that is we're looking at every reason somebody calls via customer service and saying, and that's these calls right here, inbound bookings, questions about service, question about my account, my credit card doesn't work, my app's not working, whatever it might be. And we want to bucket those against what likely DCTA can take on, what VIA will have to keep, and then what needs to be worked out. So every one of these is a workflow that we got to understand at what point do we not have the ability to control that process? Because ultimately that drives the cost of the GoZone customer service function being outsourced. So what I have now is just 2 scenarios, and we're just about at the end, 2 scenarios on what the cost impact of these scenarios are. Right now, GoZone customer service is $567,000 a year, about $47,000 a month. Best case scenario, we get GoZone customer service costs down to $10,000 a month, because some of those complaints are going to be, I'm not happy with my driver. VIA has to handle that. So we're not going to get to 0, but we can get to $10,000 perhaps. Then you look at our current NTMC assigned call staff, and then 2 new service representatives, the 4 position we talked about before, plus the supervisor. What this graph is showing you is that from October, this is October where we are right now, to October of next fiscal year, if we can get these things worked out, the GoZone customer service requirement drops significantly, and we end up saving about $13,000 a month. That's best case scenario, adding the staff, taking away a large chunk of that GoZone cost. Now, this does not include cost of potential technology that we don't have identified yet. And it also, again, doesn't talk about weekend customer service, which has probably more options. If we call it the worst case scenario, the worst case scenario is we're only able to eliminate $10,000 a month in GoZone costs. The ongoing GoZone customer service cost is $35,000 a month, and we have to add 6 new employees to cover it. You're looking at a cost increase per year of about $250,000. That's what's shown in the red box up there. When you paint the edges of this issue that we're trying to solve for, these are your cost impacts. Savings of up to $160,000 a year, or cost growth of $250,000 a year. Our proposal is that we hire this leader of customer service so that we can dig further into these details, that we can work with VIA to figure out what can come inside of DCTA and do that and to do the service as cost effectively as possible and provide the best quality of service to our people. And then we come back and we update you on how these numbers are shaping up as we go along. Our service has grown significantly over the course of the last year, nearly over 2.9 million trips this year. This, I think, is a reflection of the potential for cost growth on customer service, is a reflection of the fact that we're running a bigger system today than we were at the beginning of the year. So our proposed next steps, like we said, hire this leader that is already in the budget, refine our streams and processes for this customer service data collection, continue talking with VIA about their developments and our ability to insource, continue the Spare Labs platform implementation, and then we revisit with you in the spring to show you how it's going and at that point, make a decision on whether budget is authorized to begin hiring additional customer service staff to complement the great staff that we already have in place. Any questions?
I don't have any questions. I just have a comment, and I'm the only board member that can say this with a straight face. So your population of 60 and older in Denton County in 2019 was like about 137,000. It's projected by 2024 that that's going to go up to 38.6%. I'm willing to bet to some degree that the riders my age and younger, 60 and over, are a lot of what these calls may be. I don't see that going down. As our population ages, 38.6 is a big, and that's 2024, that's like next year. So I think that it's important for that we service this population. And I'm pretty sure a lot of those calls are people my age, a little bit younger and older, that have trouble, right? Booking a ride or doing things over the internet, and they call. What are the issues that they're calling about, right? How do I do this? How do I do that? So I don't see it actually going down. I see it as our population ages in Denton County. Maybe not significantly, but 38.6 is pretty significant. So I just want to kind of keep that in mind as we're talking about. I just think a lot of those calls may be coming from my population.
That's grumpy Gen Xers following behind you are going to be wanting to stay off that phone. But it is a fair point.
Paul, can you go back to page 39 and really kind of cover that first bullet point at the bottom and why that impacts this particular slide as it relates to 6% of the calls? 6% are by phone and 94% are by app, just in Denton.
Oh, this one right here?
Yeah, can I explain that? Because that one doesn't really mirror with what you're telling us in the rest of the slides.
Yeah, so yeah, it's a great point. What we're saying here is that in Denton, there were average or 619,000 trips between October and September. 582,000 were booked by phone, and 582 were booked by the app. 37,200 were booked by phone. So 37,000 bookings by phone is a really big number, but when you compare it to how many people are booking by the app, it puts it in some context that it's actually a relatively small number compared to the overall service. Does that help?
It does, and I kind of go back to what Kristen said. I think that's some accurate data that we would like to see is what was FY 22 at those same figures like that and those total numbers. Did it come down? Did it go up? Ridership went up, phone calls went down. That's the trend that we would probably need to look at over time. And I'm sorry, and then I think the data we also don't have, and you may not have it because of that bullet point number 1. It's because that we don't have particularly what the calls were for.
Right.
Was it general information? How do I get to this? Or were they bookings?
Yeah, I have, what we have is a snapshot from about a year ago where it was 50% or more or slightly more of those calls were about booking rides. And now we see it's about 2/3. The challenge that we have right now, and the reason that we want to continue with the process of filling this customer service position is this is a significant undertaking to dig into all this data and get what we need from VIA and be able to put all this stuff together. And that's the kind of work that we can do over the course of the next several months.
I got a question. Are the customer service reps trained as they're booking someone on the app, which we talked about? I agree with you, Diane, on your observation. Are they walking people through it at the same time, or it's also a training opportunity, or are they just booking it?
Well, if
Like,
we're talking
okay,
about
great, we're glad you're here. Let me walk you through this so we can figure this out.
we don't have any indication from customer service, from the VIA customer service folks that they're training people on how to use the app. They're simply taking the phone call and booking the ride by phone. They're doing what they've been instructed to do. However, an in-sourced customer service function gives us the ability to make that part of the standard operating.
No, I think a change to the protocol would do that.
Okay.
I mean, I think we say as you're booking them, we'd love for you to walk people through it so that they don't have to, I mean, I think that conversation needs to be had that as they're, because that is ultimately providing the best customer service instead of just booking them, but helping them to have a comfort level to where they can not have to use the phone. We obviously want to be there for them. But I think someone, if they hung up on the phone, think, oh, wow, I feel empowered to be able to do this myself. When they get off the phone, I think that would be, I think that's the ultimate level of.
The one area,
Details about it.
the one area in here I think needs some attention is the fact that there is a large passenger base that actually have other people booking trips for folks. So when they call in and make those trips, they're doing it by phone and telling them where to stand in order to get the service. And so it's not one where they have the ability of actually doing it via an app or learning that process. So there's a high level of customers that are actually doing that.
You're saying like, I would book for my elderly mother.
Exactly.
That's what you're talking
Exactly. You get that in the ADA and non-ADA services as well. That folks are actually booking trips for loved ones or what have you. So that.
Okay.
Exactly.
I think that helps understand me.
Other questions? All right, this is only a discussion. We'll look forward to seeing additional information as it comes available.
Okay. Well, thank you all for the time and enduring the analysis here, but the numbers matter and we want to show you that. And so we will intend to proceed in this direction and get this customer service job advertised so that we can continue digging into this issue. So thank you very much.
Item 8, discuss the update on the intermediate service plan. We have Mr. Christina and Mr. Palermo on this one.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. This is the, I'm following up on our last update on the intermediate service plan that took place in May. And we have done a lot of analysis since then. The beginnings of the intermediate service plan started when we started to recognize that this trove of data that Ozone put out showed us that there's some duplication and an opportunity to optimize service, to have the best mode in the best place. Currently, we're right about step 4, step 5, by looking at different methodologies to see where GoZone might be more cost effective and where Connect might be cost effective, and also areas where they can connect. ridership for the last year has gone way above expectations. The forecast I did when Paul first started, I gotta throw them all away and start over. Oh, I'm sorry. Connect service, the brand has gone up 20%, irrespective of service adjustments. Route 3, 6, and 7 went up 77%, and that's through primarily because of frequency increases on the 6 and 7, and corresponding increases overall on the 3. GoZone, our increased investments in GoZone, we've reached a steady state. All the way across. Over the course of the fiscal year over year, it's gone up 38%. And about 4% over the course of fiscal year. Whereas we've had 124% growth on our Connect service. In May, you asked us to go back and take a look at the number of trips on Connect service that begin and end within a quarter mile of the GoZone, of GoZone trips that begin and end within a quarter mile of the Connect service area. Upon doing that, we realized that there is no significant change in the origin and destination pattern with those GoZone trips. It's still about, with both ends, is about 7%. With an origin end, it's about, and a destination end, it's about 30%. And that tells us that it's not so much the school-related trips, but there's still a lot of activity around the schools. But it's mostly for maintenance of household and shopping and people to stay over the summer. The road ahead, last May, we talked about how we're going to use this data, how we're going to parse out where Connect service might be optimal, and as well as where GoZone service might be optimal. And the first step would be potentially limiting GoZone service in certain areas where there's Connect service in order to encourage people on the more efficient route, and then build that onto a larger network over time. This is a big recap of the university. About 22% of all Denton GoZone trips are with begin or end within a quarter mile of UNT, and about 5% within TWU. We're starting to work with TWU to try to get them integrated into our system more to both potentially bring fixed route out to them, because there's a lot of GoZone activity going in and around you, as you can see, in and around TWU. Before I turn it over to Paul, who's going to talk about productivity and prioritization, and he's going to propose a methodology. Are there any questions about the analysis so far?
This is not a question. It's more of a comment. I know for a fact that you are aware of it, but I want to make sure that the board members are also aware. If you could go back to the slide that shows the map of the TWU area. The TWU golf course there, if you're not aware of the master planning process that's underway at TWU, that golf course is going to be developed, and the campus footprint is going to double in size, and enrollment is also going to double. So that's, I know that you are incorporating that into your plans, but I want to make sure that we're all aware of that.
Thank you. Anything else?
Thank you, Tim. Okay, so how do we move forward in this intermediate service plan process? And we'll do more math, but it's It's gonna go fast. It'll be fine. Last summer, last summer, when you all made the decision to retain 3, 6, and 7, you did that based on the average productivity of those 3 routes, which was about 5 passengers per hour. And we were diligent to talk through that process about taking our conversation away from whether individual routes were okay and more about what is our standard for a productive bus route. And that's where the line was drawn, and that's where we are continuing. The good news is that here's the data set from the COA, and then here's this year's data set. What you see is 23% in average weekday passengers per revenue hour, 34% increase in average Saturday passengers per revenue hour. So almost across the board by time of day, more passengers are moving in a given revenue hour than were last year. What is a revenue hour? A revenue hour is one bus on the road doing service for 1 hour. The challenge is, and I wrote this down, so I want to be really precise about how I say this. If we're working to understand how to move as many people as possible in the network, as cost effectively as possible, this passengers per revenue hour tells part of the story, because while the bus network is moving more people, we also added more buses. So you can say, well, you're moving more people because you put more bus cost on it. What is the cost per passenger on the Go Zone service versus the bus service? To do that, we need a second metric, and we're calling that this passengers per network scheduled hour, which really is the number of passengers moving, not just on an individual bus or an individual route, but the number of passengers moving over the whole network. Because if we believe that we increased frequency and that helped drive more ridership, then you have to consider the cost of all the buses on the network for any one passenger that's moving, because that passenger very likely got on the bus at one place, did a transfer, and got off at another place. And so the way that this works is, if you're looking at it from a revenue hour perspective, 5 passengers in 1 revenue hour, you're still 5 passengers per revenue hour. If you move 10 people on 2 buses, that's 2 revenue hours, you're still at 5 passengers per revenue hour. But when you look at it from a scheduled hour perspective, I had 5 passengers moving on 1 network scheduled hour, which is 3 buses in operation. Now we're moving 10 people on 1 network scheduled hour because we've added more buses to the system. 10 passengers per network scheduled hour is the metric. And that allows us, well, before we get there, and that's what's shown in this graph here. So you see the difference, passengers per revenue hour, 10.7. When we look at the whole system, you see 10.7 on Route 7, you see 18. So if we want to talk about moving the most people as cost effectively as possible, we have to think about all the costs that's on the bus network and all the people that are on the bus network. But if you want to know what's happening on this specific route, then you go to the 5 passengers per hour as being the minimum standard. So let's talk about passengers per scheduled hour or passengers per service hour. This is the current schedule that we're running today. Connect 3 runs on 40-minute frequency. That means a bus shows up at a bus stop on Connect 3 every 40 minutes. That's the route to the shelter. Route 6 runs on 20-minute frequency at the bookends of the day and 40-minute frequency in the middle. Route 7 runs on 20-minute frequency all day. It takes 1 bus to provide 40 minutes on Route 3. It takes 2 buses to provide 20-minute frequency. So what's happening on Route 6 is you got 2 buses deployed on average. You get 1 bus deployed in the middle of the day, and then you get another 2 buses deployed at the end of the day. Route 7, you got 2 buses on the route all day. Here's that passengers per scheduled hour table from the previous slide. And now we get to look at how these costs play out. So in the morning, 5 buses on the system, let's say $106 an hour for a bus, and we'll talk about why that is. 5 times 106, $534 for 1 hour of service on a bus network that's moving 5 buses. If we're moving 27 people in that hour on average, 27 coming from the sum of all of these averages on each individual route, you get to a cost per passenger of $19.80 for that period of the day on the bus network. Now, this is where the Go Zone perspective comes in. You say, well, what would it cost to move those people on Go Zone? If that bus wasn't there, we could move those people on Go Zone, let's say. Well, to move 26 people or 27 people On a GO Zone vehicle or a GO Zone network that moves 4.2 passengers per hour, you need 7 vehicles. You need 7 GO Zones to replace those 5 buses. Dividing that same 27 passengers by $355, which is the cost of those GO Zone vehicles, you get to a cost per passenger of $13.70. So in the morning, GO Zone wins. If we're talking by cost, lowest cost wins. But in the midday, look at what happens. In the midday, we went to a 40-minute frequency on Route 6. We've only got 4 buses on the network. We're moving more people, 37 people. The cost per passenger on the bus network goes to $11.56. GO Zone, to move those 37 people, you need more GO Zone vehicles. Cost per passenger is $12.35. So now the bus is more cost effective. Are you all following that? Following? Okay, good. I want to make sure. It's a lot of math. But then look at the evening. A bit fewer people, 5 buses, $16.71 a passenger versus GO Zone $12.70. The bus is more expensive at that point. But then in the late day, the bus gets more cost effective again. Now, we all know that you really, to make a bus network effective, you can't put a bus on the road in the morning or not put the bus on the road in the morning and take it off and put it on at midday and then take it off and put it back. It's got to run consistently. That's where the data, what I'm going to say here is the data can get us to like the 5-yard line. The policy decision gets us into the end zone on what kind of network we want to run. And that's what this whole framework is hopefully going to set up for you all to be able to do. So this is a methodology proposal that we would like to get your buy-in on so that we can continue. All these numbers are based on the costs that were in place during the COA. Cheryl talked about all the great people that she's hiring. When those people get hired, she's going to be able to dig into these costs and update these numbers for this year. That's right. For this year and into next year. But this is the same table from the COA last summer. $107 an hour on the bus, $50.80 on the GO Zone. Again, methodology proposal at this point. So what's happening with this cost per passenger calculation on the GO Zone versus the buses? Kristen, I'm guessing you're loving this right now, right? Okay, you're loving it. Okay, good. So on the GO Zone side, the GO Zone vehicle can move 4.2 passengers per hour. 1 passenger in a GO Zone vehicle, $50.80 to put that GO Zone vehicle on the road. Cost per passenger, $50.80. If you get 4 passengers on that vehicle, cost per passenger goes down to $12.70. But you can't move 5 people on this 1 GO Zone vehicle. So now you got to add another vehicle. So look what happens. Your 5th passenger goes to $20.32. So the max cost per passenger has dropped. But when you put 8 people in the GO Zone service, you're back to $12.70 per passenger. So every time you add a GO Zone vehicle, your max cost per passenger comes down a little bit, but we're not going to get below that $12.70 a rider. And I've done that all the way out to 40 people. You can see the pattern holds and you'll see it graphically here in a second. But look at on the bus network. On the bus network, if we've got 5 buses running, max capacity 200 people, 40 people per bus. If I've got 1 passenger on 5 buses, that's $534 a passenger. Not a good number. But look at what happens every time you add a passenger, how that cost per passenger drops precipitously. It's never going to get to 0, but when you get to 100 passengers per hour, or on the bus, you're at $5.35 a passenger. GO Zone's not going to go below $12.70. So now, if you put these things into a graph, what you will see is, here's that GO Zone line, the orange line, going across, and here's that cost per passenger varying, and it's going to kind of flatten out to $12.70. And here's the cost of the bus service in the blue curve. If you go to how many people we were moving at midday on the network, 37 passengers per hour. That's this number across the bottom of the screen. That 37 passengers per hour intersects the bus curve before it intersects the GO Zone curve. The bus service is more cost effective. But if I'm only moving 13 to 15 people per hour on the network, GO Zone's more cost effective. Anytime you're up in this quadrant, GO Zone's more cost effective. When more people get on the system, the bus becomes more cost effective. If you all had not made the decision to invest in the bus network, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. Because I would guess that all these passenger per hour counts would be far, far to the left. But because you made that decision, and now more people are using the service, you've moved all these passengers per hour out here. And so now the question is, what happens if we invest again? That's the policy decision that you all get to make. I can get you to 5-yard line with the data. At some point in this whole process, you'll get to make a decision about investing in additional bus frequency or additional bus network on new routes that'll cause us to be moving more passengers per hour on a bus network at a lower overall cost than on the Go Zone side. In this graph here, the dotted blue line is what happens if you add a bus to the network. If you add a bus to the network, on average, Go Zone and the bus are going to be about the same. But if more people start riding the system because you added that bus, you're going to be in the bus zone down here. Does that make sense? But if we look at the AM and the PM, where the bus was less favorable at the outset, you see that cost for the passenger count way far to the left, it's not as favorable. Well, you can't invest in the bus just in one part of the day if you're going to, especially if you're starting a new route. So this is where we need to provide you the ability to make a decision with this picture in mind so that you can make a bet on putting people on the bus as the more cost-effective mode of transportation. My hope, my expectation is this gets us to the root of this cost per passenger and what is the most cost-effective way to move people in the DCTA system so that we can begin to parse out and not duplicate service in Denton. So that's the reason for this briefing, is to provide you all this context and ask for your feedback on this sort of analysis. Can you see this getting us to the place that we want to go? Because if so, we're ready to dive in.
Paul,
Any questions?
could you, I know this, but for a refresher, could you explain why the Go Zone cannot go below 1270 a passenger again?
Sure. So what you see here is first 4 passengers, 1 vehicle, you're spending $50.80. If you want to move a 5th person, you got to add another Go Zone vehicle. The cost of those 2 Go Zone vehicles is $101, and it's simply the division. That $101 divided by 8 is $12.70. $50.80 divided by 4 is $12.70. Every time you add the same number and you divide by the same number, you're going to get the same number. Make sense? And I had to do, when we plotted this and saw this line, we're like, why is that happening? It makes sense when you look at it this way. It's about the division of the same number over and over.
Paul, is that because what we've seen with the network is that our maximum capacity on a Go Zone vehicle with what we've been able to achieve with our specific system is 4.2. So that's where the 4 is coming from.
That's right. Yeah, if our productivity went, and by the way, Go Zone the VIA folks tell us that our system is one of the most productive, if not the most productive in their portfolio. 4.2 is a really good productivity for a 4-passenger van in 1 hour, or 6-passenger van in 1 hour. Yeah, if the productivity for some reason went up, then we would expect we'd get more people on the vehicle, and that would change this math. But we've seen that 4.2 be pretty consistent since launch.
Got a question. Your next slide, Paul. Is the data telling us, and I'm trying to understand the data, is the data telling us that maybe an option is to start the bus network later in the morning? Is that
that could be, there is an infinite number of alternatives that we can come up with about what is the right time to start, what is the right time to start the bus that you would get the most number of people on the bus. And that's what this is going to allow you to see pretty clearly. Because right now we're looking at this in those 3-hour blocks of the AM, the midday, the PM period,
right,
the evening period.
Right. Okay.
And we can also, as we get into the data, we can look at what is that ridership by time of day and kind of bracket in that regard. And so that's really the next step. Okay.
Other comments? I've got a couple.
Sure.
Conversations with TWU.
Introductory conversation to meet the Chancellor of TWU. City Manager Sarah Hensley's been kind enough to get us together for lunch a couple months ago, and that was like I said, an introductory conversation. We've got a good relationship with them from a community relations standpoint. Mary Worthington on our team does a really good job of staying connected with them, and so with the analysis that we've shown you here, our follow-up is to get back in front of them and say, what does this mean to you? How do you receive this? What conclusions do you draw about your student population relative to the use of the transit system, and what might that mean for us going forward?
And just to remind everybody, TWD doesn't have a contract with us. They
Correct.
don't pay their students. Can their students just hop on bus 7 for free or whatever?
Now, we would expect that they would pay the fare.
Yeah, so they have to pay a fare.
Right.
And they are doing that today.
If they're riding the system legally.
They're riding the system legally. Okay. Yeah,
I have not validated every fare
Fair.
this year, but.
That's fair. That's really more on Javier though, isn't it? I think, and just if we're really going to think about adding more service through that corridor,
Mhm.
they need to come to the table. That's or we can create alternatives.
Right.
There's carrots and sticks, right? It's all financial. I think as part of this conversation, just to put a pin on this, I would like to start. So we find some efficiency here. We shift ridership onto a connect route. That frees up capacity in Denton. We also know that capacity is going to get filled in Denton for Go Zone. I want to make sure that we're talking about there's more service that's been provided because we've added another bus. So where is that additional service for the other communities that are part of DCTA? So whether that's modifying KPIs for Go Zone, whether that's pushing out further bracketing to be able to do that. But again, if the goal is to increase ridership, then we need to make sure that we're looking at ridership over the entire DCTA territory and not just get caught up in this bus versus Go Zone, because then we're only focused on Denton, which we already know consumes the lion's share of the operational budget. So I want to put a pin on that.
Understood.
I had one more question. So I do really love this, by the way. I'm sure Cesar does too. But I guess I'm totally with you on the methodology here, and it makes sense. And so I know we've talked about this from the beginning of how do we, use the data that we have to figure out the most efficient way to move people. And you've come up with a way to, this is how we figure out how we do that. And so I really appreciate that. What my question is what is our capacity as far as if we know, it's going to cost this much per passenger per hour, how much do we have to spend on moving people via this mode / what I mean is the Go Zone and Connect versus the rail? Because if we could keep putting money into it, but at some point we are going to, it's going to start to impact the rail service because we're going to be spending more money here. Do we have an idea of like what is the goal that we're reaching for on, between these two modes? This is the max we want to be at.
I think the answer to that question ties to the comment that Chair Gilmore just made, that what we set out to do in this intermediate service plan process is to say, if it takes this many dollars on Go Zone to move this many people, it would take less dollars to move these people on the bus. So then what do we do with that nugget of Go Zone capacity that costs $50 an hour per vehicle? Do we put that on another part of the system and drive better performance? Do we put that to another part of the city of Denton that is not currently served? How that is exactly the point of the whole exercise. The budget, our revenues are anticipated. That's why we go through the budget process. The mix of, and you can only do so much with the dollars that you have. It is a trade-off. if we're spending more on bus service, then should we spend less on GO Zone service? Should we spend less on the rail service, all that sort of thing?
That's what I'm asking.
And I'm thinking about this as, I'll back up to a slide that Tim showed. The way that I'm thinking about this is that if we get to a place where GO Zone or the buses are determined to be more cost effective for large portions of the city of Denton, then the coverage of that area by the GO Zone fleet is significant. What do we do with that $3.5 million or that $4 million or whatever that number turns out to be? Well, some portion of that is going to be we can run the bus a little bit more so that we can move all those people and shove the line of passengers per hour to the right. But we got to make sure that we're doing it in a way that we come out better than we were when we started this whole thing. That makes sense?
And I think to add a different concern to that is when we look at our long-range financials, we've got to find some ways to rein that in a bit, because we know that that's not sustainable over the long haul.
Right.
So the service levels we have today aren't sustainable over the long haul based on what we've seen to this point. So there's going to be some cost savings we've got to be able to generate out of this as well.
And that is the point of this exercise, is to figure out how much GO Zone cost could be offset by fixed route so that we can, or not, and it could go the other way as well. And that way the board can make decisions about not duplicating service on the same geography.
Anything else on this one?
No, sir, we're going to proceed in this direction.
Item 9.
Okay, so RTC. A few things of importance that happened for DCTA. One of interest is partnership for regional events. When I say our region is looking at some pretty interesting things coming down the road. And so a lot of these things are going to be happening in what we call the Arlington Entertainment District. But staff was requesting approval of funds to support planning and infrastructure for upcoming regional events. For instance, in 2024, the Texas Rangers will host the Major League Baseball All-Star Game. The region has also been selected to participate in the North American FIFA World Cup in 2026. Both events are going to be held in the Arlington Entertainment District. Also present at the meeting were representatives from the Naval Air Station Joint Reserve Base in Fort Worth. They'll be hosting the Wings Over Cowtown air show featuring the Blue Angels in April 2024, and they're expecting anywhere from 150 to 180,000 spectators. And then all events will bring significant, the hope is significant economic development to various parts of the region, but also present transportation challenges. So Arlington District projects were identified in the categories of operations. So the amount of funds requested is 17.5 million. But due to the timing of the needed infrastructure, the city of Arlington has agreed to swap the 17.5 million in local funds currently allocated for improvements to the Randall Mill Street Road for 17.5 million in federal funds to construct the project. So I thought that was interesting. For those of us that attended the transit agencies where the 3 CEOs were present and gave information. One of the items that was discussed was the regional transit version 2.0 planning for year 2050. So staff was requesting the RTC action to initiate a comprehensive transit study focused on advancing transportation authority, city communication on common concerns, greater transportation authority, collaboration between agencies, and additional attention on expanding transit services to areas with transit needs. So therefore, the consideration of transit version 2.0. And this identified 7 programs, more aggressive transit legislative program, increased membership, 3 agency collaboration between systems, creating infield development, transit board teamwork, transit fare rewards program, and budget understanding. To DCTA's credit, DCTA has been working on a lot of this already. And so, so our CEO has presented considerations for each of those levels. And we just want to make sure that the white paper, which provides a construct to integrate DCTA regionally with items that we've already orientating ourselves to pursue. So the tone of the letter signed by the cities and the language of the 7th study component that addresses efficiency and effectiveness of different types of transit service. This would include agency cost and efficiencies between transit authorities. Do the transit agencies have the correct tax rate to meet the needs discussed? Is it higher or lower? If transit agencies reviewed opportunity cost options, would partnerships develop? So if DCTA believes we have already made the hard decisions that need to be made and to resolve the paradox, wading into this conversation again could take us away from our business of the work plan. So I am thrilled that our CEO has presented what he has on each of these levels to say, we want to make sure that DCTA's participation doesn't affect what we've already done and have in our plan system. Sorry. And one more item, I believe it was agenda item number 4 or 5. And I don't have the specifics in front of me, but it was basically a request for TxDOT to become more involved in the different types of funds, the federal funds that are important to the transit agencies. And so in that discussion, RTC was looking for comments regarding the plans for TxDOT wanting to be more involved in some of the control of funds that are spent, recognizing that the 2 of the funds that were being discussed were federal funds that the transit agencies use. So we, with the help of some of our representatives, we did raise the concern that we as transit agencies don't want to lose complete control of those federal funds. And Judge, I don't know if you had a great, very mediation oriented. It's right. So I'm very protective of our funds, but the judge in his wisdom, protective of our funds as well, but wanting to be cooperative with TxDOT, but just to let them know that we are, these are some of the things we're looking at. Was there anything else, Judge, that you wanted to add?
Thank you for that comment. We were closely monitoring the situation. No, I think that's a great update you gave, Diane, as always. And so, yeah, I think it's important for everyone to realize that all of us that are in the transportation business work as partners. And so TxDOT being a significant partner, it's important that we maintain those positive relationships as we are not only working on our road mobility, but we're also have future asks, of TxDOT with potential expansion into some mobility issues that we may have. So thank you. And so, yeah, we're going to continue to work with them. And I'll be at the Council of Governments next Tuesday in the early afternoon with some of our tech state officials that are coming in, and we'll be continuing those positive dialogues.
Anything else for item 9? All right, we're going to move on into informational reports, safety, service, and ridership reports for fiscal year 2023. If you guys take a look at all of those, they're in your exhibits. I do want to quickly summarize a couple of great things. We finished the year with system ridership over 33%, which is outstanding and amazing. We really appreciate all the work. We had 225,000 passengers in fiscal year 23. We had 853,000 riders in Go Zone, and our connect routes. Now this is excluding the UNT, but just the connect routes themselves ran 133,000 on all 3 routes together. So I think from those ridership numbers, we can see where there's opportunities for improvement, and we should also be celebrating that, you know, here we are, a leader in the industry with our response after COVID. So great job, team. Appreciate that. Any other comments or questions on the safety, service, and ridership reports? Informational report on number 2, Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan update. Any comments or questions on that one? All right, future agenda items and board member requests. Staff will discuss proposed future agenda items. Board members may request an informational item or action item to be added to the next board meeting agenda. We have any future items? Hearing none, we will move on to reports on items of community interest. And pursuant to Texas Government Sections 551.0415, the Board of Directors may report on following items: expressions of thanks, congratulations or condolences, information about holiday schedules, recognition of individuals, reminders about upcoming DCTA and member city events, information about community events, announcements involving imminent threat to public health and safety. Board? The board has none. I do, and I got to go up there to do it. I want to thank staff as well for working with me to put this all together. You guys, great job. And I want to take the opportunity today to say thank you and farewell to a long-serving board member here at DCTA and a pillar of our community, Ms. Diane Costa, who informed me and her city council that she would not be seeking a reappointment to service on the board here at DCTA. She senses the call that her time and talents are needed elsewhere, particularly in service to her husband, children, and grandchildren, as well as her church family. It's appropriate for us to pause the business of our board to recognize and celebrate her accomplishments in service to her community and to this agency. Diane's educational and professional training and her work points to her passion for leading people and serving others in pursuit of unity and the common good. She is formally trained and certified as a mediator and counselor and has dedicated her life to causes of justice, serving the underserved among us. Without a doubt, she has succeeded in every sphere where she has engaged, both in her private business endeavors and in the public sector. Her impact on DCTA has been significant and has stretched across many different leadership roles that she has assumed over the years. As a member of the City Council in Highland Village from 2002 to 2006, and then as a 2-term mayor from 2006 to 2010, she has been a strong proponent of DCTA and transportation across all modes. Always an advocate for the citizens of Highland Village and a visionary for the region, she recognized the benefits that the A-Train could bring to both working hard and making it a reality. And in fact, she was presented in Governor Perry's office in 2009, where he authorized the funding expenditure that made the project a reality. Then in 2017, when called upon to represent the city's interests on the DCTA Board of Directors, she jumped at the chance, and in her 6-year tenure on the board, she has served in every capacity: member, secretary, vice chair, and chair. This service came at a pivotal time in which the agency took on a new direction, sharply focused on the priorities of our member cities, and she was instrumental in making the vision a reality through the transformation initiative that led to, among other things, the launch of Go Zone, one of the largest microtransit operations in the country. Through her leadership and commitment to this board, DCTA has set a new course, rebounded from the depths of the pandemic, and delivered nearly 3 million rides last fiscal year. Challenging times call for bold leaders, and Diane has proven herself to be one of those whose skills and talents were well placed for the time in which she served. Diane, we are grateful to you for your service to the community and to this agency. And in recognition of this significant milestone, your departure from our board, we offer the following resolution. And this is where my mayor skill set really kicks in, because we have some whereases to get after. This is a resolution honoring Diane Costa for 6 years of service to the Denton County Transportation Authority Board of Directors. Whereas Diane Costa has served with honor and distinction on the Board of Directors of the Denton County Transportation Authority as the duly appointed representative of the city of Highland Village for 6 years and has decided to conclude her tenure on the board. And whereas Diane has been a visionary and strong advocate for multimodal transportation, the Denton County Transportation Authority, and the importance of public transportation in the region. And whereas Diane's leadership as a member of the city of Highland Village City Council and as mayor of Highland Village was central to the success of the A-Train's funding, construction, and launch in 2011. And whereas Diane stepped forward when called upon by the city of Highland Village to provide strong, effective representation to lead the authority through the revision of its enabling legislation in the 2019 state legislative session and through the significant transformation that followed at the authority. And whereas Diane's wisdom and perseverance in her roles as chair, vice chair, secretary, and board member were central to the board of directors' transformation of the authority's service offering to its member cities, enabling the authority to rapidly recover its ridership following the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas Diane plans to dedicate more of her time and talents in service to her church, family, and community who will benefit greatly from her wisdom and care. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Board of Directors of the Denton County Transportation Authority, Louisville, Texas, does hereby extend to Diane Costa our sincere and grateful appreciation for her dedicated service and leadership in the Denton County Transportation Authority and its stakeholders during a pivotal period of the authority's history, and extend to her our best wishes for continued success, happiness, and good health in the years to come. In official recognition whereof, the Denton County Transportation Board of Directors sets their hands and cause the seal of the Denton County Transportation Authority to be affixed the 26th day of October, 2023. Thank you, Diane.
Well, thank you so much. A difficult decision. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much. This means a lot. But my family knows that I could not be leaving DCTA if I was not convinced that staff is in the best hands, that the board is amazing, that we went over the humps that we needed to get past. And I only see a bright future for DCTA as they continue. And each one of you have been such a blessing in my life. And I thank y'all so much for that. As I said at the RTC, one of the other things I'll be doing, I will still be working in trafficking to some degree, but in human trafficking. So I'll also be working in that capacity. But thank y'all so much. It's with great hope and self satisfaction that I'm able to leave, knowing this is done. This is a good deal. Everybody's on the right track. It's a great board, the amazing staff, and God bless each and every one of y'all. Thank you so much. And one more thing. You are going to love my replacement. Our current mayor of Highland Village, Mayor Dan Jaworski, has accepted to take this position. He has a love for transportation as well. And he will serve our city well, and he will serve as a board member well. So thank y'all so much.
Any other comments?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would like to extend some comments in appreciation to Diane. In all my years in office, I've dealt with scores of mayors across this county. And Diane, you're just right up there at the top of my favorites because you do it for the right reason. And I think you have such a skill and ability to be passionate about your convictions and your point of view, but also have a viewpoint for a win-win for all parties. And I think it's that mediation training. I think it's part of your Christian belief and value system that you are able to be a strong advocate, but also do it in a kind way where it's a win-win for everybody. And so I've told you privately, and I'd like to tell you publicly, you've just been such an inspiration to me personally. And you've had a viewpoint to advance the individual interests of DCTA, but also been a regional partner. right? And so, and I think that's a good example for Dan and any of your other successors from Highland Village or to be on this board. So anyway, just thank you so much. I wish you all the best. And on behalf of the million residents of Denton County, as county judge, I just want to say thank you. Thank you. And thank you for your friendship. Diane's one of those that you can call and visit with and seek her advice. And it's always sound. And I just count you as a personal friend and just thank you for everything. You'll be missed.
I think a lot has been said about your service to the agency, and I, of course, want to thank you for that. Sorry, oh my gosh. I also want to thank you very personally for your friendship and your mentorship. And I don't know why I'm crying because I know that those aren't over. So thank you.
Well, I'm going to try and say a few words now. When I first came to Highland Village, of course, then Mayor Charlotte Wilcox wanted me to meet certain people in the community that were active and leaders of the community. Diane was one of those first persons. And I believe the first week I was there was a dedication of the Aaron Hudson Memorial Bridge, who was a Highland Village resident who lost his life in the line of duty serving his country. And I found out then that Diane was instrumental in making that happen. And of course, that was the tip of the iceberg. I soon found out so many other things. And with her leadership on council and as mayor, she guided Highland Village through some very difficult decisions, the right decisions that really set a path for the development of Highland Village as it should. Diane has been a real mentor to me, educating me on DCTA. Such a steady hand, steady leadership. And I thank you for all of that personally. And I know the residents of Highland Village thank you for all you've done as a mayor, as a council member, and as a DCTA representative. And I hope we can still call on you when we need advice or need assistance. So thank you for everything.
Other comments?
Mr. Chair, if none, I'd like to go to the front and provide a presentation on behalf of the staff and then get everybody together. So, Diane, there's nothing more that can be said. And I can't say much, otherwise I'll end up like everybody else is. So on behalf of the staff, we want to thank you for your selfless dedication, service, and leadership to our board of directors for the period September 2017 to November 2023 with our great appreciation. And then these flowers are for you also, grown in Highland Village, irrigated by Highland Village Water, a local small business that I'd be happy to tell you about at the right time.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much.
Keep those fingerprints.
We'll get it cleaned up.
Highland Village has it all, I've always said.
So if we could, we'd love to get everybody up to the front to take a photo in
Come on.
front of the
Photo
screen.
time. Coordinate.
I know, right?
Perfect.
Is that all of us? Okay.
Have everybody move to this way just a little bit.
Here we go.
Get that new logo.
Little center. Get that.
All out.
logo.
Get that logo on there.
There you go. All right, well, maybe step over here.
All right.
Better?
Yeah, I just wanted you in the flags. There we go. A little closer. On 3, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, already doing it.
Our other board members.
3, 1. Let's make a.
Turn sideways. There you go. It's good, isn't it?
Got it?
Okay. Out of here, on 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Thank you.
Very good. Thank
Thank you.
Recess for lunch. All right, with that, we're gonna go ahead and take a 15-minute recess. That'll put us back here at about 26 after, and then we'll move into an executive session from there. So if you all want to take a bio break, grab lunch, we're on recess. All right, we're back in open session as there is no further action to be taken. This meeting is adjourned. It is 1:30 PM.